You're watching Leafs Morning Take with host Nick Alberga and former NHLer Jay Rosehill. The show starts now.
Still perfect in 2025. What's going on, everybody? It's time for the Wednesday edition of Leafs Morning Take presented by Bet365. It's Nick Alberga and Jay Rosehill. What's going on, Rosie?
What is going on? What a road record for these pesky Maple Leafs. My goodness, they're tearing it up, man. It's not perfect, but it looks pretty good on paper, doesn't it?
I know. We're going to break it all down here on the Wednesday edition. Open account with Bet365 today and bet on a huge range of markets. Whatever the moment, it's never ordinary at Bet365. Use code NATION, all in uppercase today. That's NATION, N-A-T-I-O-N. Don't forget as well, our Super Chat charity partner this season is Sick Kids. Want to make sure that your question or comment gets on the show. Hit us up with a Super Chat. Proceeds from our Super Chat will go to Sick Kids, ranked the #1 research-intensive children's hospital in Canada and third in the world. The Maple Leafs are feeling good in 2025, Rosie.
Yeah, they are. A little halfway checkpoint, check the temperature, see where we're at. And by all accounts, it looks pretty good. I think the conversation is starting to shift to, is this different than in the past when they've looked damn good in the regular season? And I, in particular, say yes.
You know what's not different, Rosie? The fans in Philadelphia. And you live this because you were a Philadelphia Flyer. Just before coming on this show, we got video of, I guess, a fan brawl in Philly between a Flyers fan and a Leafs fan last night. I need your extensive breakdown, please.
This comes out of nowhere, dude. There's just a little taunting. You think they're going to get in the face of, the guy and have a little FU match going on. He just starts throwing lefts and right bombs, suckers, both of them. And these Leaf fans wear it like champs. Look at this. Nothing. Who can you, only in Philly do you come down over a skirmish after a sports event and just start throwing hooks at the face, left, right, and center, man. That was wild. But I am impressed by those boys wearing those punches like champs.
It is a different breed in Philadelphia. I've also lived it. Years ago, I used to go on a Leafs trip with a bunch of buddies. It was part of my brother's friend group too. So you'd probably take about 40 to 45 people, much like the Nation vacation, down to a place to watch the Leafs. I've been in Nashville, went to Boston, a couple other places. One of them was Philadelphia. We needed a police escort out of that building. And by the way, the Flyers shellacked the Maple Leafs in that game. And I always recall this game because I had an infamous picture like this. I was wearing one of those big ass like Leafs toques. I don't even know if it was a toque. It was like a big ass, I forget what company it was, but I was wearing it. And some guy who was a photographer for Sports Illustrated or female took a picture of me, and it actually made it on the Sports Illustrated website. And it was like disgruntled fans of the Maple Leafs. It was like the really, really bad era. It could have been actually around the time you were a Maple Leaf. I don't feel Kessel was on the team, but man, they were just giving it to us. And when you get a couple of vodka sodas in your system, a couple beers, it was just a police escort out the building, and it was like a buffet. These Flyers fans were waiting for Leafs fans, man.
Yeah, I think if you're going to go to a visiting barn and wear your colors and act like a complete doughhead, maybe pick a town that's not Philadelphia, because as you can see with that video, they don't put up with that. That's nuts what that guy did. I do not condone any of that stuff. I can't imagine. I don't know, it's got to be the booze, but when people are throwing bombs at each other, it's just, I'm always like, wow, I can see you could get into it, if you're part of the sport, but in the crowd's a little bit different. And sounds like you got away lucky in Philly there one night, because I can imagine your actions, and you probably needed a good shot to the head.
Buddy, I was sour, man. You pay all that money to go watch the Maple Leafs play back in that day, and they got powdered by Philadelphia. The game was over in the first 15 minutes. I'm like, what now? Let's have a bunch of drinks and try to spark up a fight, get the boys going a bit. It wasn't me, though. But
well, they probably weren't utilizing me properly within the lineup. So, I mean, it starts there, and you can look at that for some of the shortfallings of that era, obviously.
Yeah, I showed up, and I'm like, it's Jay Rosehill. Like, why is he not on the first line with Phil Kessel? Why is he playing 652 like Ryan Reaves last night, not fighting in a -1?
At least I got in a scrap here or there, buddy.
Buddy, I don't know what's going on. If there was a perfect game for Ryan Reaves to drop the gloves, it was last night against Philadelphia, and it was Connor Dewar.
I was gonna say, if Connor Dewar's taking your job, we got problemos, my man. I don't know what it is. Like, obviously, you don't want to take penalties. You don't want to go out there and muck it up like it's 2001, but like, man, there doesn't seem to be even a hint of effort there. And I mean, I'm thinking about his age right now. I mean, hats off to him for staying in the league that long, but to be a guy of his speed and skill and in his job, I mean, that went by the wayside in like 2014, 15. And here we are 10 years later, and he's still in the league. And again, hats off to him. But if you're not being a physical presence, if you're not a deterrent, if you're not intimidating the other team, if you're just out there just looping around and not really accomplishing a lot, I really don't understand. And I don't want to knock Ryan Reaves personally. I have respect for him. I just don't know why he won't take the opportunities when they're given to him and do the thing he's done his entire career. It's puzzling.
The only logical explanation is two things. One, nobody wants to go him, which I don't see as likely. And two, there's been Craig Berube in the wording saying, hey, we really don't want you to fight. This is how we want you to play. Because, again, Ryan Reaves has never shied away from a scrap in his career. I know he's a bit long in the tooth, but even last year, he put up a good fight against some of the heavyweights in the league. So it really is bizarre. I will say this, down the road, whether he moves on, to another organization or he retires at some point, we got to get this guy on again. We had Ryan Reaves on last summer. We're just going to ask him stone cold, stone face. I mean, what's the deal here? Because it's bizarre, Rosie. Like, they have 7 scraps and Ryan Reaves hasn't fought once, and it is January 8th now.
Yeah, and like you said, maybe there's not a lot of guys that are willing combatants, but we've seen, especially at the beginning of the season with, the Jack guys and the Rempes, there's different guys that have come up to him. There's opportunities where even if you don't fight, you keep your hands down and go grab a guy by the crest of his jersey and get, nose to nose with him and let him know that I'm here and you do one more thing and I'm going to take a penalty on you and it's going to hurt, kind of thing, and make the guy go, no, I'm probably going to take it down a notch here. And he hasn't even done that. And it's like running around and hammering guys. He doesn't seem to be able to accomplish that really either. And yeah, I'm very surprised that, like you say, halfway point through the season, there have been opportunities. Why not try to be a presence a little bit more? He is wily enough where he can go and play that role without taking penalties. So I don't understand why. And I don't buy the Craig Berube thing. I've had coaches before saying, hey, you don't have to fight and, don't. It's like, yeah, but when there's a time and an opportunity, and he knows that as well as anybody, when those opportunities are, he's been doing it for a living. Why not take it? There's no coach in the world that's going to be mad at you if you do it properly and pick your spot and do it without taking a penalty. There's nothing but good that comes out of that, especially with him being one of the tougher guys in the league. It doesn't make a lot of sense. It's like I said, a head scratcher.
I love what we expected fight night in Philadelphia. And again, the only scrap we got was Connor Dewar and Joel Farabee. And by the way, I'm going to get Rosie to break down this scrap in about 15 or 20 minutes from now. But did you see this whole thing, this video in the KHL that went viral the other day, Rosie?
Oh, with the kid's phone?
I thought it was fake. I thought this video was fake. So a player's looping and shooting around the ice in the KHL because it's another no-hit league, and his phone drops out of his pants. What?
Dude, isn't there a story that Upshaw, something to do with that on the bench or something? I can't remember what it is. I think this has kind of somewhat been seen before to some degree, but that is, I mean, there's so many times where, a player gets run off of a team or run out of town or whatever, and I kind of feel for the guy, and I wonder if I was the coach, if I could, I usually see where a guy's coming from or what his background is, and it's kind of like, but that, I would put the hammer of Thor down on that guy. Like, are you kidding me? You're playing professional hockey in this league and your precious little phone, like, talk about a Gen Z move like I have never seen before. There is something to do with hockey teams and locker rooms. Even in this day and age, you just don't see the phones. And it's just, you get to the rink, you put it in your locker, and it's just gone until you leave, and that's the end of the story. Maybe if you're on the training table, you're looking at some videos, whatever, but no one's cruising around with their nose in their phone around the locker room. That's what's beautiful about it. This idiot takes it onto the bench during a game. Like, how addicted to your phone are you when that's the case? It's sliding across the ice during a professional hockey game at one of the highest levels there is. I would ship that guy to Novo Kuznetson and say goodbye forever. I would never want a guy that's that dumb on my team and that addicted to his phone and has his priorities that buggered up. I was just in shock, man. I would crucify that kid for that.
It is hilarious, and I've referenced it before. I have one of my cousin's close friends is a big time Montreal Canadiens fan, and he sent me a text the other day about Ivan Demidov. I think he was a third overall pick for the Montreal Canadiens in this past June's draft, and he's just gushing. He's like, "Dude, this guy's setting records in the KHL." I'm just gonna send this video. This guy brought his like, I can't even get through it with a straight face. He had his cell phone A on the bench and then B in his pants on the ice, and you're telling me this is a real league and not a fantasy league?
I mean, maybe if he's like, my wife's in labor or something, but even then you give it to a trainer and say, hey, check this, and here's the situation. Having it in your gear during a game is it's just, there is no excuse for it. It's shocking. I just can't imagine. People have said, and producer Vic saying here too, imagine that was like Tortorella's team. They would ship him to the other ends of Russia, up in Siberia. It would be the end of a guy, and I can't imagine what that conversation was like, what his excuse is. But the first thing I think of is just a Gen Z kid who is so addicted to his phone, he takes it to that level, which is just pathetic.
He would be exiled to Robida Island. Imagine it happened like on a Lou Lamoriello team.
Oh, exactly, man.
Like, I don't know. That is so bizarre that it was almost like fake when I saw it. I'm like, A, he had his phone on the bench. B, it was in his pants.
Who is that guy?
I don't know, some random guy who's never going to make the show. But
Not
was
anymore.
he waiting for an important text like on the ice where he had to answer it in a scrum or something? Is that what was going on?
That's my question. What is your excuse? I'd love to hear his excuse and how bad it is, because there is no excuse. But again, even if it was something super important with a family member or somebody's sickness, I mean, that's the only thing I can imagine someone would defend that thing for, is what if his father was sick or something? But yeah, fine. You don't bring it on the bench personally and put it in your gear. That's insane. Give it to a trainer, do it that way. But I just have a feeling he's just that hooked onto his phone. You know how you leave the house without your phone and you kind of feel naked? I can imagine these kids this day who have grown up with it in their hand can't even put it down for a couple hours to play a hockey game. Is wild.
At the Leafs Nation 401, Blended Family says in the chat, in an interview, he said he put it on his shelf and it must have slid into his equipment.
Bullshit. You know what? Oh, maybe. Oh, if it falls in the, because I thought it came out of the front. There's nowhere to put a phone, like a heavy iPhone in your gear, where unless you stitched in a pocket, which is another level. But maybe it fell off the shelf into the back of his pants. But if you know hockey pants, the second you stand up, that thing's coming out. He's in the middle of a shift. Maybe. Okay, maybe. But if anything else other than a complete happenstance, coincidence, fluke type of thing, where it did get lodged in his gear unknowingly to him, I just think that's crazy.
That reeks of my dog ate my homework, a classic Nick Alberga line from grade 4 to like maybe grade 12. So we'll leave that conversation at that. But also make sure you join us in Music City Thursday, March 20th to Sunday, March 23rd, the first ever TLN Nation vacation, where you get to have pops with me, Jay Rosehill, Carter Hutton, producer Vic, Zach Phillips, and a whole whack of Leafs fans. And you got to watch a Toronto game in Nashville, Bridgestone Arena, one of the best barns to watch a hockey game. Among that, a bunch of winery tours too. It's going to be fun.
Live pod VIP treatment at a winery. Hit up Broadway. Man, it's fun down there. It is really fun. If you haven't been there, you have to check that out. And it's a great time of year to get out of this country when it's getting chilly in those dog days of the winter. It's a good little reprieve from all of that. So sign up and go on a little nation vacation with us. I'm excited.
Are we leaving the country, going from Canada to the States is the question, Rosie.
Maybe not for long. Man, wild times on the news, man. The Gulf of America now. Good Lord.
What are they going to call Lake Ontario?
Yeah, I know. A's, you want to redo that too? It's crazy times.
Lake New York. We're offering 2 packages. One with flights, $24.50 plus tax. One without, $12.99 plus tax. Please note hotel rooms are double occupancy. For more information on how to book, head on over to nationgear.ca or check out the link in our show bio. Life's too short for ordinary vacations. Rosie, we got our great white buffalo on today's podcast. One of your favorite players growing up, Hockey Hall of Famer, former Toronto Maple Leaf, Eric Lindros is dropping by in about 20 here.
I know. I'm excited for that. I didn't fanboy over too many players growing up, but he was right there at the top. There was that heyday of Rock'em Sock'em 7 where he just had this montage of him just being the most dominant player that the league has seen in so long in many different ways, right? Not just the skill, but the physicality. So I can't wait to pick his brain about that, and excited for this. Another high-end interview on Leafs Morning Take.
At the Leafs Nation 401, do us a favor, hit that like button, hit that subscribe button. Leafs Morning Take, wherever you find your podcast. Make sure to leave us a 5-star review, and don't forget to visit the LeafsNation.com. So the second straight game, a 3-2 victory for the Maple Leafs in a very difficult barn to win in Philadelphia in regulation this time. They've won 5 in a row, 6 of 7, 5 straight on the road. But without question, the big story, again, Joseph Woll makes 30 stops. And I thought the Leafs did a really good job of keeping the Flyers to the perimeter for the majority of the game.
Yeah, not bad. It wasn't perfect. As far as their start, what do they have? 2 shots in the
That
period,
was awful.
including 2 power plays. Like, good Lord, boys. That's pathetic. So there's things that need to be addressed. But again, like I think I said a couple days ago, they're finding ways to win in games that they may not even deserve to win. And back in, years past, they may have played pretty decent, but they'd make such boneheaded blunders that it would cost them the game, and they would find ways to lose. And I think that there's things that need to be cleaned up. I think they have like 17 or 18 wins this year when being outshot. So
Yeah.
you could clean that up a little bit. But without a doubt, it's this new structure, new system, new mentality. The defense is shored up. The goaltending's phenomenal. That leads to a lot of positive things on that hockey games, and they're benefiting from it, and their record and everything's showing. I'm just thinking about down the road, we're going to start to have this conversation, I believe, of who the hell do you go with, because both of our goaltenders are so damn good once Stoley gets back.
Well, that's the thing, is there hasn't been much conversation on the status of Anthony Stolarz. Like,
No.
we think he's maybe 2 to 3 weeks away, but begs the question. Joseph Woll, playing the way he is now, has won 14 of 20 appearances so far this season. He's been rock solid. When Stolarz does come back, you almost have to de facto go back to like game 1 of the season prior to the injury and suggest that the 1A right now is Joseph Woll. Would you agree?
Yeah, I think when he's back, it'll just be scheduling, right? Like, I don't think they're going to lean heavily on Joseph Woll and say, "Sorry, Stoley, like it's this guy's crease." They'll bring Stoley in kind of slowly and kind of introduce him with the right timing, being as he's been off for quite a while. Once he comes back with an injury to his knee, that's going to take some time. So I think they'll kind of tiptoe into it and make sure they don't rush him. At the same time, it's Woll has played so fantastically. They both have. Like, has any of them had? None of them have had a bad game. There's a couple of times where maybe a bad goal, and I
Matt
mean, we're
Murray
talking
has.
about the halfway point in the season here, right? There's not a lot to pick apart in either of these guys. They've ham and egged it very well. When one's down, the other one steps up. That's exactly what Woll's doing right now. Stoley's done it when Woll was down. If you get them both healthy, once you reintroduce Stoley and get them both just standing there healthy as a horse, I think you just start switch hitting them again, man. Like, what else makes sense? They're both have shown they can play phenomenal, and I honestly don't even see a front runner right now, which is a great thing.
We haven't really talked about this, but I, for one, think they need to establish a number 1 guy before the playoffs. Like, we saw it happen to the Boston Bruins last year in the playoffs, where they're like, no, we're going to go back and forth and back and forth. And then finally they pick a guy. But I just think you're playing with danger. Like, I truly feel like come the postseason, again, still 40 games away, they need to figure out who their guy's going to be and then roll with it. Do you feel differently about it?
Well, sort of. If there's a guy that's standing out, then yeah, go with him. Or if there's a hot hand in the last 5 games of the season, then start with him. And I'm not saying have him on a short leash, but if there's one where he has a tough one or whatever, then it's just tough. How do you just pick one guy when they're both equally dominating
Yeah.
and playing fantastically? How do you say, like, which one then? So who do you go with if they're both dominating? Like, I'm leaning a little bit towards Stoley. I just think that when I watch the games, his positioning and his movement is and his size is so dominant. He's so big, he's so calm, and he just turns everything to the side. But Woll can also be just like that as well. So I understand your thought process in saying it's it's beneficial to have a guy and to lead with him. But if they're both doing what they're doing this year, how do you choose that individual?
There's no perfect playbook. You're right. And I think, dissimilar to Boston, where they just went back and forth and back and forth. I think to your point, you have to ride the hot hand. If it's Anthony Stolarz for game one of the playoffs, you go with him, you win, you keep going, you lose.
Yeah.
Well, you maybe move on to the next guy. I mean, there's got to be a bit of a cushion there where it's like, if you have a really good start, then you start again. But it's a big feeling process, right? I think with the coaching staff when it comes to the crease, but certainly both those two guys have been rock solid, specifically Stolarz before the injury. Joseph Woll, they needed this from him, especially the last couple of weeks though, Anthony Stolarz and the uncertainties surrounding the position when it came to Hildeby and Matt Murray and Woll. Again, a big reason why the Leafs come out of Philadelphia with 2 points in that game. But ho-hum, I think sometimes you need the big boys to produce and be your key producers. And again, I thought it happened. Tavares a goal and assist, Matthews a goal and assist, Marner 2 apples. And again, we talk about the clutch factor of Matthew Nyes, the big tip there in the third period, number 16 on the season.
Yeah, big time. I put my money on Marner to score and Willie to have a couple of points, and I was on the right track, but totally lost it. Willie has been kind of a ghost. And that's what's funny about this team. You can have one of your big boys go away for a while, whether it's injury to Austin Matthews or, you don't see Johnny for a couple of games or now, kind of the story, if you want to call it that, is Nylander not really being around. Like, you don't really notice him at all. It seems like, he's playing with Bobby McMahon last night. The first period, couple chances, he dishes it over him, kind of almost like, maybe I'm reading into it, but it was almost like a little bit of attitude, like throws him this kind of half-ass sauce and then like kind of like do something with that. Like almost he's got a little bit of an attitude. And I'm not saying that's what it is, but a guy like Willie, he has a tendency to kind of go away for a little while. And, maybe we get on him a little bit. Maybe the media starts to go and you poke the bear and he's just going to bust out and just shove it up everyone's rear end, which is what he can do. But when the Leafs are as deep as they are, like you said, a guy like Willie can go away for a while. Everyone else steps up huge. And, I think the story right now that has kind of popped off the page this week has been Matthew Nyes. We were talking about how he hadn't scored in X amount of games, and now he's got 5 in the last 3 games. I mean, the smile on his face, he's just like, oh my God, we're back, baby. And, Mitch has just been a consummate point machine. I don't even think Austin is playing as well, not even close to as well as he could, but his numbers are ridiculous. Like, that's how good he is. I don't think we've seen his best yet, where he just takes over a game and is just burying everything he touches. We know we can do that from last season. So it's a great thing to have, but man, it would be cool to see everyone firing on all cylinders at the right time. That would be the playoffs, obviously. I don't think this team could be stopped if you get the big boys all playing their best with the other factors of the game that they have, that they've shored up this season.
That was vintage Marner and Matthews in the slot there to combine for that goal. But you're right on Matthews. 3 games so far since returning from his latest setback. 2 goals, 5 assists, 7 points, plus 7. In general, the Nyes, Matthews, Marner line has been guiding this team beyond belief the last little while. But I teed it up, foreshadowed it a bit earlier on. You want to break down the Dewar and Farabee scrap here?
Yeah, let's look at it.
We will get it on the screen at some point in time.
Well, we kind of pulled that out of nowhere. A good square up, man. He's quite a bit smaller. He looks like he's engaged. He wants to go on offense. He's not scared. He gets a good grab. And now I'm going, don't hold on with that right hand. Don't hold on. And he just goes, chuck, chuck, chuck. Watch this one. They both land at the same time, kind of near the end. I'm like, get up, get your head up, get your head up. Boom, boom. Oh, I love that. Awesome. They both go down. Fantastic. The bench is absolutely jacked. This team doesn't see a lot of scraps. Dewar's, he's been there before. He's done it before, but he's not the guy you'd think of right away. And my biggest pet peeve when guys are fighting who don't fight all the time is when they have their grip with their left hand, if they're a righty, and then they hold on to the guys with their right hand. It drives me bananas. It's like, he's holding on to you with that. Why are you holding on to it? You're wasting your hand that you're supposed to be punching with. The best defense is a good offense. Get your free hand and chuck it at the guy as much as you possibly can. I promise you're going to come out with a good result.
I was laughing when I saw the gloves chucking on like side screen with the camera. I'm like, well, it's going to be Hathaway. It's going to be Reaves. And then like they pan in and it's
Huh?
Connor Dewar and Joel Farabee. I was like, what
Uh,
is happening right now?
oh, it's just as good as anything, man. When guys that don't scrap all the time step up, I tell you, the bench is like, oh, like it's the greatest. And speaking of what you noticed, you don't see it very often, but even if you're watching a game or the plays at the other end and you hear that sound, it's that sound of sticks hitting the ice, that
Oh,
tung
yeah.
ting ting, and then the crowd kind of does something, and you're like, "What am I missing?" And then the whistle goes for no reason, and everyone stops and
It's
looks
like,
around. You know what? And it all happens within a second and a half. And you look over and ah, everyone stands up and can't wait to see it. It's just the greatest thing in sports, if you ask me.
yeah, I thought it was really good of Connor Dewar to step to the plate. But if you were to ask me and tell me Connor Dewar would have a scrap before Ryan Reaves, I would call you crazy. Revo comes back to the lineup, -1, 652. So the Leafs surrender 2 goals, and I think it was their fault on both. I mean, not to place the blame on Reaves, to flex off his stick, and then the second one, just a classic miscommunication. Like they were out of the zone. Philadelphia was going for a change, and miscommunication, I believe, between Timmins and Bobby McMahon. It stripped. And that Travis Konechny, not that I question the decision to name him to Canada's roster for the Four Nations, but I thought he was great last night. I think he's going to be awesome for Canada.
Yeah, I really like that guy, man. The way he plays, he is a Philadelphia Flyer, and he was showing it last night. But yeah, I don't know. Like go back to Revo, I just wonder what's going to happen because if it, I don't believe it's Berube that's holding him back and putting the reins on him. I mean, for the first time all year, he really hinted at here's why Revo's in the lineup, and I want to see X, and it just wasn't there. And I don't know if he's I can't imagine he's injured. I mean, he got hurt last year. It's just, I don't understand it. But my question is, what happens now? When is he in the lineup next? Is he in next game? How do you justify that? There's no chance you put him in again after, breaking apart that third line that's had a fair bit of success over, the last few weeks. It's just, I just question what the future is for Ryan Reaves with some years left on his contract and how he fits in. If he's not going to do the thing that he's brought here to do, then I wonder what his future is. Again, I'm just really careful not to knock him, and I played
Yeah.
that role, and it's so impressive that he's still in the league and he's there for a reason. But I'd be remiss if I wasn't covering the Maple Leafs and had that big question mark over that topic.
So Nick Robertson was the healthy scratch last night. I think you and I both agree we're just uncertain how he fits on this roster moving forward, especially the brand, the style they want to play, not only in the regular season, but in the Stanley Cup playoffs. On top of that, I'm not a big fan of Pacioretty. I know what they're trying to do, have him as a checker on the third line. I just think he's better with better players, at least as a Maple Leaf. And I really didn't think he was very effective last night either.
Yeah, I didn't notice him too much. I know that he's kind of reinvented his game and realized that there is a role that's missing, and he's going to plug that hole by playing a style of play that he's not traditionally done in his career. But that's just a smart professional right there who realizes I'm in the twilight years of my career. I have had some injury problems. I got to get back to being valuable to a team in some way, shape, or form, and it's not being the number one guy that he was in years past. And I think he's done a good job at filling those holes. Where that is exactly, I don't mind him on a second line, kind of depending on who the personnel is. I do think that, if you do still crash and bang when you're a second liner, you create room for those guys. You're skilled enough and you have a hockey IQ that can play with those guys. And you can kind of be defensively responsible, make sure you're covering, being the third man high, this, that, the other thing. I don't mind that at all. I really think that at the deadline, we're going to get a 3C. And I think, maybe you put Domi to the wing, out goes Robertson, and all of a sudden that depth looks really nice depending on who that player could be. And the fact that they've already mentioned that's their target is that gives you some optimism for the fact that they'll rectify that problem.
At the Leafs Nation 401, hit that like button, hit that subscribe button, send those super chats in and support us, Sick Kids. Mike Rushton sends us this super chat. Great show, guys. I'd love to see a reunion with Kadri. He's a gamer and could be an ideal 3C that can move up if Matthews goes down again. Also, bring back Shen to partner with Riley. That's from Mike. Thanks so much, Mike.
Interesting. Yeah, I'm a fan of Kadri, man. I mean, he is a good player, and he was good when he was here. problem was getting a little too bit horned up in the playoffs and
So
taking
horny.
suspensions for crying out loud. And, you know, being a little longer in the tooth now, I think maybe he would learn from that. But I know that he's in love with London, where he's from, I believe, and where he played
Yeah.
junior. Lundo this, Lundo that. He's a Toronto boy. I think that I can't imagine he wouldn't be against coming here in there being a contender. And if he was a piece that like got them over the hump to have this really playoff performing team, I think he would be all for it. It seems like it would make sense that he feels he has unfinished business here. So I'm not against that at all.
It's weird, but I'd rather a player get horned up in the playoffs than be a guy that you don't even notice out there. Like, that was
No
a funny
kidding.
story with Kadri. Like, he even went to Colorado. Didn't he get suspended the first playoffs he was in Colorado too?
I think so, man. He's an animal. When he came in,
So horny.
he was such a young kid, and he had a lot to learn about being a pro, I remember, but he really didn't care what people thought. And he's a funny character. I like him a lot. And I think with the cup under his belt and more experience, I think, you know, if he was smart, he would look and say, here's what they need me to do if he was to come here. And again, I would way rather have to pull back on the reins than have to crack the whip. And if you think back to watching the Leafs in the playoffs, sometimes you're just watching line after line turn over, and you're just like, somebody do something, and they can't. And a guy like Kadri could spark that bit of momentum that you need on those games.
Somebody in the chat made a really good point, that 62% of the games so far this season, the Maple Leafs have been outshot. Does that bother you? For me, it doesn't, because I think I really trust the system and the brand and the style that they're playing here, Rosie.
Yeah, I mean, it's not a good stat. It's something you'd want to clean up for sure. And there's times it doesn't look like it on paper. Like, yeah, that is the truth. But if you look back to the styles they played in years previously, it's much higher chances they're giving up. Odd man rushes like crazy. It's a lot more detrimental to the team's success than what they're giving up right now. If they're giving up some perimeter shots and whatnot, fine. I'm sure they want to clean that up, but it's not something that really concerns me like things in the past.
Because watching the game last night, like the high danger chances, there were a couple, but I think they were self-inflicted, some mistakes by the Maple Leafs. I mean, we talked about the 2 goals, but I think if you get outshot, yeah, the numbers don't look great, but I think it's the way the teams are shooting. It's very like empty caloried, like the Maple Leafs, and not to place the blame on the previous coach, but it happened a lot where they would powder, 55 shots, 45 shots on goal, but a lot of the, high danger opportunities would be like 2 or 3 in the game. I just think the team trust the system. They're very predictable in the fact that night in, night out, Rosie, we're seeing the same type of display defensively, which I love to see.
Yeah, I mean, their D is short up. There's no debate about that, and their goaltending's fantastic. So, I mean, you can afford to give up a couple more of those perimeter shots. Like you say, I just don't see them being those high-quality chances that they left out in the past.
The following interview is brought to you by Charm Diamond Centers. Get custom ring building delivered in less than 4 weeks with the Charm Masterpiece Program and an unbeatable pricing policy. Charm Diamond Centers is proudly Canadian-owned and operated since 1972 with more than 85 locations across the country through Charm and their sister brands. For more information, go to charmdiamondcenters.com as you bring in the Big E himself, Eric Lindros. What's going on, Eric?
How you guys doing?
Good.
How are you?
Thanks for coming.
Yeah, you guys here enjoying this the nice chill?
Rosie,
yeah, it's been good watching these Maple Leafs go for a little run. We're breaking it down every day, but Eric, I grew up watching you, and I got a chance to talk to you here. When I think about Don Cherry, Rock'em Sock'em, I think about you in a Flyers uniform, with those Cooper Technoflex is just legendary stuff. And it's not the goals or anything so much that I think about. It's the way you played was so dominant, and you were just manhandling grown men in the league. And you didn't have to do that because you were so skilled, and it inspired me to play hockey that way. I loved everything about it. But I want to ask you, was there anyone or anything that made you play that style of hockey?
Oh, I don't know. It's kind of the way that in terms of making your ascent in hockey, that's kind of how I felt I needed to play. Everything from making World Junior teams to going and playing at the Canada Cup. You got to differentiate yourself a little bit. And I think that's it might be a topic later on about when I look at some of the teams, a lot of the guys all look the same. I mean, how do you differentiate yourself? What do you give that's a little bit different from the next guy, so the coach notices you and makes puts you on the ice or even makes you part of the roster if it's at that level. So it's just I don't know, it's just the way we went about it, and it was there was so much hooking and holding that it was all so much of it was based on strength and trying to get through people as opposed to avoiding people.
Yeah, it's such a much different game. We just saw the Leafs and Flyers get together in back-to-back games. What do you make of today's game, Eric?
It's different. It's certainly different. I watched, we were there, our family was there Sunday night, and I thought it was a good game. I didn't get to see the whole thing. We left a bit, the kids are young, so we left a little bit before the third period ended. But, I thought it was a pretty good game. I look at the game right now, and it depends on how far you want to go. I think that teams that decide that they want to turn on the physical element of things just before the playoffs don't seem to do very well. I think the teams that play heavy all the way through, their bodies get used to it. They get accustomed to it. They get, that's the way that they play. And come playoff time, I think it's a big advantage to have that in your arsenal. I'm not saying, a team needs to play that way every night, but certainly it's certainly not a switch that you kind of flick on and say, okay, now all of a sudden it's playoff hockey. We need to pick up on our physical side. It's a whole different game. We're seeing a lot of, they're calling these kneeing penalties, even at the World Junior. I don't know. What did you guys think of the World Junior situation?
Well, I was going to ask you as well. It's the refereeing is so difficult. You get a guy from these different countries, and the leagues that they ref in, they're completely different styles of hockey. So to get everyone together and try to ref it the way that I think it should be reffed, I guess, is difficult, but it just seems like they don't let the intensity ramp up. They love putting their hand up, and it's almost like they get off on being in control of the game, which drives me nuts. And you look at the way the World Juniors used to be played, the way Canada used to play, it's almost like even if they wanted to, which it doesn't look like they do, but they're not able to dominate physically the way they used to, which is certainly disappointing. And it's so much different than your era, correct?
Well, I look at some of the penalties, and some of them, they're pretty obvious what we, I say we always want Canada to win and to do well. But I look at some of the kneeing things, and it was always seemed to be head on head. You know what I mean? Like it wasn't like we were veering guys and taking ice and taking a living room and shoving them into a closet. We were. It was a lot of high risk one-on-one straight at two trains going at things. That's one thing that I saw, and you're right. The refereeing, I thought we would have had a chance had it been an American referee, to be honest with you, in the quarters. But once you get tagged as being kind of the dirty team in a tournament, and it's hard to shake that. It's hard to shake that. That the buzz about your team and what's happened thus far. So they can't wait to put their hand up at times. So that was a bit frustrating for sure.
What about Canada in general? I mean, their shortcomings, it's like a historic loss, losing in the quarters twice in a row, which has never been done before. What do you think needs to change from there, if from your point of view?
Listen, it's hard. It's I've got my opinions. I'm not sure that it's a tricky world out there. It's so political, even within this GTHL. It's a very interesting situation around it all. Listen, we've got good players. We've got, I think there's good coaching in Canada. It's a matter of getting the guys that truly want to play, that truly want to develop and move on, that they're given full heart all the time, as opposed to possibly some that are kind of put into a situation and allowed to continue on without the stresses of challenging for a job or being on a team that's that loses from from time to time. I think we're getting a lot of guys out of the real high end teams, and they're not accustomed to the grind at times. That's just my opinion. I think that what we saw there was just guys that were used to, and it's a quick tournament, right? Things can happen very fast in these things. It's difficult, but you're not used to losing. You're not used to having to take a 90-degree turn and change the direction of your team. It's hard to do on a national stage and an international stage.
Well, Eric, we could talk about the World Juniors until we're blue in the face, but I do want to talk a bit about the Maple Leafs, your time as a Leaf, being a lifelong fan. August 11, 2005, you ink a one-year deal to play for your hometown team. What do you remember about those negotiations, and what went through your head when it finally became official? What do you remember?
They were short, and O'Dog signed just about around the same time as well. I always liked Jeff's great. Just to come back and play in Toronto. I wish I had done it earlier and healthier. I think I got in about 20 games or so, or 28 games or so. I'd wrecked my retinacular as it went on. But no, I loved playing in Toronto for it was always a dream, right? You grow up around here, it's all about the blue and white, and I wanted to experience it. So I was fortunate enough to have a chance at the end.
Was it what you expected, and what were some differences of being a Maple Leaf compared to the other organizations you played for?
Well, I'd only really played, I played for Philly and New York. Listen, like, Philly's intense. There's no question about it. Toronto's intense too. And some guys, people mention we might not get some of the free agents because they don't like the scrutiny here or there. Listen, you wake up in Toronto, you go down to the diner, and I'm trying to remember the name of the diner that was down the way that we, a lot of guys would go over to before practice, and everybody in the place would know if you had a good game the night before or a stinker. That's just the way it is, and it kept you honest. I liked it. I thought it was good. People are happy to say hello and wish you good luck at the gas station. People are. It was very similar to Philadelphia in that regard. They want you to do well. They're pulling for you. There's tons and tons of well wishers. So I enjoyed Toronto. I think it's a great hockey city, and I enjoyed Philly. New York was different, right? You've got 3 NHL teams within 50 miles. You've got 2 NFL teams. You got Robert De Niro walking down the street. Right? There's New York's a whole different animal. But Toronto and Philadelphia are certainly great spots to play.
Your old teammate Craig Berube has this team playing some really, really inspired hockey, playing with identity. Are you shocked at that at all?
Not at all. No, he's done well. You look back to St. Louis days. I mean, like, I was always shocked that remember when that, I think it was Game 6 or something, that it went really against St. Louis. There was a penalty called, or I forget the incident that occurred, and for him to rally his guys and to come back out and to just erase the board and say, all right, that happened. We're moving on. We just got to go win one game. And to go out and be successful in that's pretty incredible. He's a good coach, and then they brought in like Tanev on the back end. I'm impressed with him. He's done a really good job. I think that's people have underestimated the effect that he's had both on the ice and I bet you in the dressing room. We're not in the dressing room, as so it's tricky to say, but I think there's a real calming effect to his presence. And I think that's a really good, a big point for them.
Yeah, and speaking of Chief, you got to play for Pat Quinn when you were in Toronto. What were some of the coaches that you really loved playing for, and what was their philosophy?
I loved Roger Nielsen. Roger Nielsen recognized that there were 23 guys on the roster. Everyone had different strengths, different weaknesses. He could yell and scream at some of us, and he never really yell and scream. It was Roger. He rarely ever swore. Didn't swear much at all. But there was different ways and different tactics that he would use to get his points across, depending on the personality of the player. And then when it came to off ice training, some guys had endurance and maybe not so much the foot speed. He was one of the first guys to break it down further and not just blanket everybody with the same paintbrush and identify where your weaknesses were. I think in hockey we always talk about how good we are at certain things. You got a big shot, you got this, you got that. What are you not so good at? And let's get on that to improve it to the point where we're, you're not looking at it or hearing about it as a deficiency. It's actually an asset. So he was one of the first. I loved Roger. It was too bad the way things ended up there, but he was a really good coach.
Eric, 1967, a long ass time ago, man. What does this team need to do in the Stanley Cup playoffs to finally push through, in your opinion?
I think the first thing is just health, right? You've got. I was there like Sunday night. That was really unfortunate. I forget the Philadelphia player that fell on the it was McCabe.
Yeah.
And I think his shoulder came down and hit him. Right when his head was hitting the ice, and it was, you got to be healthy. That's number one. I think that's a big element of it. Listen, they got depends on what they want to do at the deadline and things like that. I think they're, the room seems to be better. So yeah, who knows what can happen. It's a big part of this is health and just when things don't go well, how do we react? How do you pivot, and how quickly can you pivot? And that's why I was trying to point out that game 6 or whatever in the with St. Louis. I forget the exact time, but Craig might be that. Craig's done this before, and who's to say he can't do it again?
For sure. Some of these line mates are looking for some chemistry right now, obviously, as you start to look ahead of the playoffs. You had some chemistry, Legion of Doom line, some guys you like playing with. Who are some of your favorite teammates to play with, and do you still keep in touch with some of the guys from your playing days?
I just got off the phone with Johnny this morning. He's ribbing me about World Juniors, and I got a million questions about the academy program down in the States. We talk fairly frequently. I haven't talked to Rennie in a bit. I guess it's been a few months now that's gone on. But being in Toronto, there's a bunch of guys all around. We skate Tuesdays and Thursday mornings. There's guys in and out all the time. In terms of the Flyers, there's always people floating around. You go down to the game and you see a bunch of guys, and it's fun. It's fun to catch up, but yeah, I mean, I don't get down there. I wish I got down there more, but we get down there with the kids as much as we can, and they probably get in about 3 or 4 games a year and have some fun. Get to watch it.
Awesome, love it, man. Nicky, you got one last one before we let him go?
Yep, I was just going to ask you, Eric, about Austin Matthews comes back to the lineup. I mean, it's pretty incredible. This guy's clearly ailing with something, but still just an unbelievable player. He's really producing. He's got 7 points in 3 games. What's your impression of him as a player and as a leader so far?
He's done really well this year. If we can just stay, I mean, again, health, right? That's a big thing. But there's just seems to be the guys are pulling it together. I mean, look at when I watch Nye's play, I think there's no end to how good that he can get. Yeah. He's solid. You look at him, he's got the strong neck. He skates with purpose. Like he looks like such a player. And I think as he gets his confidence going and gets more and more exposure, I think you're going to see a load that people look at yeah, we need a goal. We got to get Austin out there. I think that load can be shared a little bit more with the legs of with the Knies. I think he's going to be one of those players.
And a personal favorite of ours here on this podcast. So are you, Eric. Thank you so much for your time. Really, really appreciate it today.
Yeah, thanks, guys.
Thanks,
Be well.
Eric.
You too. That is the Big E, Eric Lindros, his first ever, premiere on Leafs Morning Take, Rosie. I love it.
Yeah, it's nice. Finally got him nailed down. It's awesome to pick his brain. I don't know. I don't fanboy too often, but
It's your guy, eh?
that was my wheelhouse, that era, man. And starting to play hit hockey and watching those tapes at Christmas. And I'm like, who is this guy? Like, he'd grab a guy with one hand and just throw him. He would take a face off and just lift the guy off of his feet. And he was like young 20 something years old and would just throw a grown man in the NHL. It was wild. And that's in an era where everyone was big and strong and tough. And then he was like better than a point a game. He's the captain. He's on the all-star team. He's winning Hart trophies. I was just in shock. So that was kind of cool to get to interview him on this show.
It's sort of funny because I alluded to the date, August 11th, 2005, and obviously a long, long time ago, but I still remember that day vividly, man. Just to see Eric Lindros in the blue and white, something that had been speculated upon, rumored for years, to come to fruition. I don't care that he was late in his career, man. There was just something giddy about me when I saw 88 in the Leafs jersey for the first time.
I know. It kind of looks funny to see it, but it's cool that he's from around there and he wanted to be on that team. And like you said, negotiations were short. He wasn't at the peak of his career and his earning power. And he just took a contract to say that he'd played for the Leafs. And again, health just kept catching up to this guy. He could not stay healthy, which is obviously one of the caveats of his career is what could have been if he was able to stay healthy. And nonetheless, cool to see him in the blue and white.
Lisa Grinton writes in via the chat, now we need to get Wendell on. Good luck with that. Never say never, I guess, on this podcast, right?
We got to get my brother to ask him to get on. When we were in the alumni box there, him and Wendell were just talking about cattle and trucks, and Lord, he's probably tighter than anybody at this point.
Yeah, we're gonna get Tyler Rosehill after him. Ty's going to call him, hey, Wendell, let's talk tractors, and then let's talk about Leafs Morning Take, and then we'll get him on the show.
Maybe that's the missing link in this thing.
Hey, jokes aside, you know what the one constant is with every interview we seem to do is the name Matthew Knies. Like, he went out of his way to – like, this is Eric Lindros going out of his way to single out Matthew Knies, man. It just speaks volumes to how this guy's perceived outside of this podcast even.
Oh, I know. I mean, if you're watching the Leafs and you're a fan of the show, you cannot understate the way that guy's popped off the page. And to come out of college and whatever, and he just made an impact instantly and beefed up a lot this summer and looks like even more of a man out there. And it shows with the space that he creates. And then he's got the finesse to finish. And maybe Eric can identify with that a little bit, being a big man, to clear some room, to go get pucks, and then have the skill to be able to finish it and finish plays and make plays and put up points as well. So yeah, it's not that surprising that he had Matthew Knies' name on the tip of his tongue.
Surely. Sorry, I'm just shaking my head at something written in the chat. Somebody's like, get Peter Zezel on, and somebody's like, he passed away in 2009. Yeah.
Shit.
That's a tough one.
Hey, sometimes these things slip through the cracks.
Brush up on your history. 2009, man. It's been 16 years. Love Peter Zezel. Love Peter Zezel. It's time for the last call, brought to you by Bet365. Open an account with Bet365 today and bet on a huge range of markets, whatever the moment. It's never ordinary at Bet365. Use code NATION, all in uppercase, today. So I had the Leafs puck line last night, and they just couldn't score that empty netter for me. I had a Nylander anytime goal. I don't think Nylander played last night, so maybe he plays against Carolina on Thursday. But I like the under tonight. Chicago, Colorado, playing the data again. 5 of the last 6 meetings have hit the under. That's the only way Chicago is going to try to win this game. It's just to bore the hell out of Colorado, one of the best offensive teams in hockey, who have been great under Mackenzie Blackwood. And I think it could be a sneaky under in this game, Rosie, under 6.5.
Cool, baby. Not a lot going on that pops out. I'm just looking at the Vancouver Canucks, Washington Capitals. Canucks are in distress, lots of distractions going on there that don't seem to be going away anytime soon. When a locker room's divided, it just does not lend itself to good hockey. And obviously, the Washington Capitals are right at the top of the league, and they are on fire. They are hot, and they are doing everything right under that new coach. So I'm going to take them on the 3-way to win in regulation, minus 120. Nice. I don't think that's a bad value at that point.
In support of Sick Kids, Jose Duarte sends us this super chat. Nice kind of reminds me of Eric Lindros. That's
there you go.
Something. He's a big dude, man. He's deceivingly big. Like we've seen. Well, you haven't seen Nice in person, have you?
No. But
seen him in person. Like he's deceivingly big when you look at him. You're like, shit, he's that tall and he's that thick, and the neck's that big. Like
he's thick. On you. Like 6'3", I think he is, and he's thick. And I think Eric even mentioned like his neck. He's got that big man neck. He's a beast. And when you run into those guys in the corner and go for a loose puck, some guys have a little bit of give to them, and some guys are just brick shit houses. And I have a feeling that Matthew Nyes is like hitting a cement truck out there, and he knows how to use it as well. He used it in college. He was a big body, protect the puck, power forward, and playing with the big boys on that line. He's got the skill to finish too. So a big JO session for Matthew Nyes today from everybody.
Well, that's exactly it. Speaking of big boys, our guy Zach Phillips in the Leafs Nation After Dark and the Sheet with Jeff Merrick. Leafs not letting Rosie get within 5 feet of Nyes. That is accurate. Very accurate.
Or my wife, she's like, is that my guy again? I'm like, all right, that's enough. She actually said, I got Big E on today. She goes, I loved him growing up. I'm like, of course you did. You just like the big man, don't you, baby?
Okay. Well, so why is she with you then?
I'm pretty good size. Good size.
Good Alberta boy. I get it. Okay, well, we'll leave it at that, Rosie. More coming up tomorrow, of course. We got a big battle. The mentor strip continues. And they're in Raleigh to take on the Carolina Hurricanes. I don't have the numbers in front of me, but historically, it hasn't been kind, at least in my mind, to the Maple Leafs, that building. I expect a tough game on the road against the Hurricanes. Another measuring stick game, in my opinion. They've won 5 in a row, the Leafs, you know?
Yeah, it will be an unfamiliar opponent so far this year. They get to go on the road to the Umstead Spa and stay in probably the best hotel on the road. Very nice, very chill. I hope they're ready to rock and keep this thing on the road going, man. They are showing some pretty brilliant play on the road. They like to be in other people's barns and play some good hockey. So shore up some of the stuff we were talking about and take care of business once again. I'll be coming on after dark after that one. So we will see what kind of mood we're in.
Sir Bob Laws writes in, get Rosie's wife on.
Now! Nah, she's out. She would not.
Cameo appearance with Dale on the show just barges onto the screen.
Oh, she just yelled what? She is.
Oh, she's home, man.
I don't think today. I'll have to give her a heads up at least.
Well, we'll say this: if the Leafs win a round, Rosie's wife could make a visit on Leafs.
Okay, I'll pass on the message.
Yeah, so tell her it's unlikely she's coming on the show this year. So.
Oh, why would you end a show with that kind of negative garbage? A very Alberga move.
Because Rosie, have you seen the power play? Okay, the last thing I want to hit on, then we'll get out of here.
We didn't touch on that.
1 for 4. Pardon me.
We didn't touch on that today, surprisingly. It's a debacle, man.
Because I made a rule. We're not talking about the power play anymore. Like, I'm personally not talking about the power play. You can vent about the power play. They were 1 for 4 last night. It was a joke. We talked about the first period up there in terms of one of the worst periods of the season for the Leafs. They have 2 shots on goal, 2 power plays, 0 shots on said power plays. It is going to cost them a round, okay? My mistake. If that was like the chef's kiss or anything like that and saying, hey, they're going to lose maybe in the first round. If they don't figure this thing out and you can't score a power play goal in the playoffs, I don't care who you're playing, you're going to lose, Rosie. End of thought.
Yeah, it's true. Honestly, I'm at the point where what are we doing? Fire Mark Savard, move on from him and get someone with a different thought, a different idea, a different strategy, because they're not. I don't even know what he's trying to teach them, but it's not working. It's like he's not even there. They brought him in to kind of get the power play going.
Did you see that like shovel in between the legs from Marner that led to the breakaway?
Like, I was just thinking about what I would say to him if I was on the coach when he comes off. I'd be like, really? Like, that's,
I don't think
you know where we're at with our power play. You know what's going on. You know how discombobulated it is and how much of a mess of yarn it is out there. You never see the same. And then whacking it between your legs into the middle of the ozone. And that's your answer to try it like that. And you clearly don't even know who's there because nobody you wanted was there. It's way too fancy. And Mitch loves doing his pirouettes in the pregame skate and in warm up, and he loves doing the fancy shit. But holy smokes, do you ever have to dial this down to about a 2 from a 12 and say, get back to business? And I think you need a new voice in there to hammer that home. Start getting pucks on net. Do anything different, man. It is, like you say, it's going, if they continue like this, it will bite them.
I'm not just singling out one player. It's across the board. Just no desperation, no urgency. I'll just add to Ivan Fedotov, statistically, never mind just eye tests, has been one of the worst goaltenders in the NHL this season. And the Leafs let him off the hook for the majority of that night. I know he scored 3 goals. They had like 10 shots, man, or whatever it was, like 15. Make life difficult. Like the power play, simplify things. This guy's awful. Just put the puck on net, you know?
Look at Tavares's goal. That doesn't go in on Hellebuck. Like it's and yeah, I think that's a misstep on the coaching. Like fire. I mean, Chief says it, but fire pucks on net. A great point against a terrible goaltender. Why wouldn't you just be peppering this guy? Instead, you're on the complete opposite end of the spectrum. But we will see what happens tomorrow night in Carolina.
Yes, we will. First and foremost, thank you to the Big E, Eric Lindros. We've been chasing him for 3 years. He got annoyed and tired of me texting him all the time. Said yes. Imagine. Probably what happened. Came on the podcast. Thank you, Big E. We love you. Everybody in the chat, you guys have been fantastic, not only today, but throughout this season at the Leafs Nation 401. Hit that like button. Hit that subscribe button. Thank you to producer Vic. For Jay Rosehill, I'm Nick Alberga. We'll talk tomorrow. Take care. Make sure to check out more of our content right here on the Leafs Nation YouTube page. We got long-form interviews. We got clips. We got epic rants by Jay Rosehill. We simply have it all. And don't forget, you can find out much more at theleafsnation.com. Thanks so much for watching.